Space, the final frontier. Do you want to explore strange new worlds, seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before? All in 2 dimensions? Well then, Starbound might just be the game for you. So 1.0 is finally here, and after years of early access, we now have the completed game. Sure, more is promised to come, and 1.0 isn't the end, but I'm here to answer one simple question. Is Starbound 1.0 worth it? So the reason this video comes a few days after the release is I really wanted to play as much of the game as possible, with several of the main questline bosses done, and a slightly attractive colony which to someone with OCD might be a hellscape, but works for me. I feel I can weigh in on whether it is worth throwing your wallet at. So if you've been hiding under a pixelated rock, Starbound is a sci-fi, action, 2D, exploration, survival, multiplayer building mix-up. If you're like most of the gaming community and have played Terraria, it's an often used comparison, with the skeletons of progression, upgrading crafting stations and accessing new materials to upgrade your equipment, defeating bosses for some world progression, spelunking under a completely mineable and lootable world. However, there are quite a few differences that the games have. Starbound exists in a limitless array of stars randomly generated, each with several worlds, moons, and other celestial bodies. These worlds all have levels of difficulty and different equipment needed to access them. For example, ocean worlds require breathing equipment to explore the ocean floor, and those that dwell in the deep. In Starbound, there is a much larger emphasis on exploration. On the surface of worlds, there are pre-existing civilizations, friendly and not so friendly, bandit groups, dungeons, and many other points of interest, which make it worth giving the whole planet a once over. You have your own ship which can chart these planets and jump to hyperspace, and then finally you can teleport down to the surface. And later in the game you'll be able to buy your own teleporters to set up bases and make some permanent spots in space where you can teleport to from wherever you are exploring. There are biomes on each planet that spawn a set type of NPCs and unique enemies. For example, my favourite NPCs, the noble hill-dwelling alpaca people. Then we've got the flesh zones filled with meat dogs that split into 2, once killed, one over. Each planet also has a general theme like forest or desert, but can have these special biomes or even different weather like snow or on a forested planet, meaning that you don't too quickly become sick of a single world. There is a hub zone called the Outpost where lots of species gather. This acts as the early game market and zone to get all of your missions. It ties everything together and you'll be visiting it a lot throughout the game. There's also a main questline now. The story is okay, but I honestly feel the function it has is tying it to the hub world, giving bosses for each level of equipment and adding that extra touch of purpose. The main questline is almost like the Ocarina of Time, where you're gathering artifacts from dungeons or temples to open up a gate. Picking up the new main equipment also does the doo-doo-doo sort of sound that you get on Zelda. Each main quest dungeon so far has been varied in enemy types and theme, and do have some nice interactions between you and the NPCs. My problem with the bosses, well so far at least, is that they are stuck in tight rooms and have very little unique movement. Saying that, the second main quest boss has had a pattern of attacks and learning to move to overcome them was genuinely fun. It is a bit more like old SNES or NES game bosses. But knowing the bosses in Terraria and how they often span the whole map, I don't think that they quite match up just yet. The combat in the game has come a long way from early access. Most weapons have secondary attacks and they can be very fun to use. For example, the uppercut on the sword, which drags enemies into the air, or one of my favourite, the spinning spear. There are also unique weapons you find in biomes, like the tentacle gun, which I picked up after fighting living poos who threw little poos at me. Yep, that happened. I wouldn't say the game has great combat, just because of the energy used on the assault weapons and the sort of repetitiveness of ranged weapons. Generally the combat feeling a little floaty, but it is a hell of a lot better than it was. The enemies' abilities have become more interesting to deal with too, with enemies shielding themselves, walking at walls, exploding on touch, and others. The only thing that is a little jarring is you may come across 2 of the same creature across different worlds, but I suppose you can suspend your disbelief and say colonists took them along to the planets. The building in the game is pleasant and you're spoiled for choice of all the themes of decor in the game. The NPCs are all linked to what you put in their respective apartments if they will come to colonize your room, but realistically you'll have to have a look at the wiki to know which one you're gonna get. apart from all the themed NPCs that you can get from the furniture frog in the outpost. The matter manipulator tool makes things rather easy, shift takes you to a single block, or you can place things with your full radius. The colony system is a game of its own inside Starbound. I spent all night to early morning attracting different types of NPCs that could guard my colony and also make it functional. The colonists will also give you missions that relate to some key points of interest you are on your current planet, and I'm not sure whether these scale, but the enemies encountered were quite hard on a level 1 planet with level 2 gear. These missions are also given at friendly NPC civilizations, and usually they are fetch, kill, or mine something quests. The enemies and NPCs that you encounter are varied, but it can get quite repetitive after you've completed a few. Sometimes the saved NPCs will join your colony, which is an added bonus. Also, those that you do lots of missions for, you'll be able to become your crewmates, which will follow you to your ship and help you out when you're in action outside of your colony. And this is the real reason for slugging it through them all, and is very rewarding. With my colony, I was also able to start a farm with crops I scavenged on planets and livestock I bought from the outpost. It is a bit like the fundamentals of Stardew Valley, and the creatures and crops have a lot of charm. There is also a cargo transporter which jets off your goods for sale, both fun to look at and practical when you place next to your produce. The early watering can splurts randomly though, and doesn't go where you click, and could really do with another Passover. Worth mentioning is that there's also a Pokemon style capture mechanic where you throw a monster ball and have a creature to take up a pet slot as an extra companion, and you summon them by throwing the ball back out again when it's full. I haven't got the materials for a pet station to heal them yet, but it is just another nice little neat feature. There are lots of other little bits I've missed, but Starbound certainly does do almost everything, just in my opinion not always the best. The species and themes of Starbound ooze charm, walking the line between cute, vicious, and slightly disgusting sometimes. The art and the parallaxes which create the backdrops on the planets are gorgeous, and the lighting systems and particle effects are lovely too. It is generally a great looking game for what it is, a pixel game. The game also has one of the best soundtracks I have ever heard. Personally, I think it is a masterpiece, and I've had it put on my phone for easily listening for a long time. The multiplayer mode is also integrated into Steam, so you can join your friend's game with one click and it's seamless. I think it is a massive plus and makes things so much easier. One thing that does need work is inventory management. You'll constantly be having your packs full to find that it is because some items don't stack, which is especially true for farming. You'll be having to dump things constantly, and honestly it just gets quite fickle. The hotbar is also an odd thing. It's fit into 6 keys on each bar to have a right and left hand slot. You can press X to get to another hotbar, but this just doesn't feel that intuitive when actually playing. I'll often find myself fumbling to the wrong slot, and I think it needs some attention. There are also techs which you can acquire in the game, like double jump, turning into a metro ball to get into small spaces, and a dash forwards. The techs for me are a little lackluster too, and the side grades you can get often are too specialised and may even be a little limiting if they use your energy. Whilst I have given quite a few negatives, I have to say that the potential of the game is boundless, and there are so many features to play with. However, the game isn't quite as deep as I would like it just yet. With updates, this may make this meandering river into an ocean. Not to mention that the game also has modding support and is integrated into the Steam Workshop, so I'm sure there'll be endless possibilities brought forth by the dedicated community. So, is it worth it for a relatively low £12 that it's currently selling at? Well, if you're into crafting or survival games, you generally like sci-fi or just want to kill some time, I would recommend getting a copy of the game. If you like Terraria, you'll probably like Starbound, but just don't expect Terraria in space because they do feel like different games. There is lots to do, and for a new player, it is just fun in the exploration. I hope you enjoyed watching. Is anyone else currently playing? What do you all think of the game, or will you be getting it? If you thought the video fulfilled the Prime Directive, give it a like. If you thought it was attractive as a Klingon, give it a dislike. Subscribe for more from me, and thanks for watching everybody. Until next time, Joshino.